أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Assalamu alaikum everyone. My name is Dr. Suzy Ismail from Cornerstone, and I'm happy to join you again as we journey through Ramadan resilience. So we've been talking a lot about grief, sadness, sorrow, depression, and despair. Now, as we try to better understand these emotions, we also want to better understand where they come from. Why do we respond in this way emotionally, and why does it impact our mental health? Now, when we look at some of the difficulties or challenges that exist for youth, for example, we often see that that state of depression can be entered into when there is low self-esteem, when there are insecurities, when there is a feeling of loneliness, or when there is discontentment, feeling like you can't find joy or happiness in anything. Now, this isn't just a youth-centric problem. We also see it in later years among adults. Someone may fall into depression because there is, again, a struggle with self-esteem, a struggle with self-valuation, a struggle in terms of seeking affection and feeling that affection is not returned, feeling alone, feeling like you have no direction. And all of these aspects can lead someone to getting stuck in that dark hole of depression. So when we look first at the self and the role of the self and how the self may interact with the environmental factors in order to impact our mental and emotional well-being, we look at the Islamic conceptualization of the levels of the Nefs. Within each of us, there exists 3 levels of the Nefs. We know that there is the basis self, which is known as the Nefs al-Ammara. It's the side of us that wants pleasure, that wants satisfaction, that wants to feel fulfilled every moment and doesn't care how that fulfillment is achieved. We also know that the second level of the nafs is the nafs al-lawwama, which is the self that questions, the conscious self, the self that maybe stops the nafs al-ammara a little bit, puts the brakes on it a little bit, and says, you know what, let's think about this. I know that my nafs wants what it wants. It has a desire and it wants to fulfill that desire. But how can I control that desire? And it's tough, but the nafs al-lawwama can be strengthened, and it can be strengthened when we learn how our self-talk can work for us instead of against us. And eventually we want that nafs to lead to the nafs al-mutma'inna, which we had mentioned in a previous episode. When we look at Surah Al-Fajr, Allah Azza wa Jal will call to the nafs al-mutma'inna, the contented self, and ask that contented self to enter into Jannah, because he will be contented with that nafs, and that nafs will be contented with Allah. So how do we see these levels of the nafs manifest or play out in our day-to-day life? So when we look at the nafs al-ammara, we may be in a situation where, for instance, let's say we really love chocolate cake. And we look at chocolate cake and our nafs al-ammara says, oh, eat the cake because it looks so good, it's going to make you happy, eat the cake. And we may be seeking that dunya type of happiness, and we think it exists in the cake. So we might eat the cake. And we might not take one slice, we might eat the whole entire cake. Now we know that that happiness that we think we're going to achieve is very fleeting, because we might have a momentary satisfaction, but we're likely to get a stomach ache, we're likely to gain weight, we're likely to feel unhealthy, and there's going to be negative repercussions. Now, if we look at that cake and we hear the nafs al-ammara saying, eat the cake, our nafs al-lawwama might kick in. And that nafs al-lawwama, the conscious self, might say, you know what, it's not a good idea to eat the whole cake. But we may still feel bad about it. We'd be like, oh, but I really want the cake looks so good. But we might stop ourselves because the nafs al-lawwama may be strong enough to stop it. Or we might say, I'm just going to take a nibble of the cake. And we're still not going to find that happiness, because we know we're going to be left wanting more of the cake, but also stopping ourselves from eating it. Now, when we reach the level of the nafs al-mutma'inna, we can approach that cake. We see that cake and we say, you know what? I know how many calories are in that cake. I know how harmful that cake is to me. I know that my stomach is going to hurt when I eat that cake. So you know what? Not only am I not going to eat the cake, but I'm so happy that I have the knowledge and the ilm and the understanding as to why it's not beneficial for me. And reaching that nafs al-mutma'inna in every part of our life is so important because it allows us to be able to see and understand the hikmah of Allah and to feel blessed that we have that understanding. And so we stay away from that which is not good for our nafs, even though we may desire it. So going through this journey of the nafs and understanding how our self-talk can guide us through it is the next episode that we'll dive into, inshallah, recognizing the impact on ourselves and how we receive those messages that we often give back to ourselves. So I hope you'll join us on iTVusa in watching the continuing episodes of Ramadan Resilience. I hope that we can join together, learn together, and really seek that knowledge to get to a better place mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Jazakumullahu khair. Wassalamu alaikum.